Well, I mean, inflation is real and it's month after month and year after year. And even with our kind of average rate of inflation around 3.25, that means that your expenses are going to more than double over the
Right.
course of
Right.
the average person's retirement lifespan.
Peter, very good to see you. Welcome back, everyone. Our countdown to retirement continues. Peter, we've made it to the top 2. I'm so excited.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
make it more
here.
important as we get more.
Countdown. We're getting ready to blast off into retirement.
Yep, almost there. So just to remind everybody, this is part of a series. We have been doing a countdown to retirement. You have a great resource on your website, richonplanning.com. We will show people how to get it, but everything is downloadable. So let's jump right into the top 2 now. As you get closer to retirement, a lot of questions start popping up, but 2 stand out as the most important to answer before you hand in your notice. So the first would be, what single financial risk could make the biggest impact on your retirement?
Yeah, and there are, of course, a lot of risks that we will face in retirement the day after we leave that paycheck behind and intend never to show up to work and earn new money again. We've got a long time in front of us where market volatility and taxes and inflation and healthcare expenses are all going to need to be considered and factored into the planning. But at the root of it, that long time in front of us is the biggest risk. Longevity has been called the risk multiplier. If I only live for 3 years in retirement, if retirement is relatively short, then the chances that one bout of market volatility, one big downturn is not going to catastrophically ruin my retirement. But over the course of 30 years, I will probably see several market cycles. We will see several market downturns. The potential for taxes to change the entire environment is real. Inflation becomes more and more of a factor the longer that we go out into the future. And the reality is that we are living longer lives, but not necessarily staying healthier. So healthcare expenses do come into effect there. But it is the longevity. It is the fact that on day one of retirement, we have a finite amount of money and an unknown amount of time that we need to make that last. And the concern of, will I run out of money? That top concern in survey after survey and poll after poll of retirees, that really leads us back to this question of, well, what is the biggest risk to the potential for running out of money? That is our longer lifespans. And this generation in particular, they're staying active. They are staying alive longer than generations previous. So we've got to plan for not only a longer, but a more active and a more expensive lifespan and longevity in front of us. That is the biggest risk to retirement. It is the risk multiplier. And yet on the other side of the coin, so to speak, it is something that we hope for. We want a longer lifespan and longevity. It's just that we've got to plan pretty carefully for it.
Mm-hmm. So the next question then would be, how can you eliminate the possibility of this risk ruining your retirement income?
You've got to really plan and stress test and run those plans out to age 105 or 125, way out into the future. We've got some really cool software designs that we can plug numbers in, and we can sort of project out into the future and see where a red line may be likely to occur, where we would run out of assets theoretically. And then we can do some different stress testing. Well, what if we get this rate of return? Well, what if the market has some down years? What if we do see inflation higher than average? And we can play with those numbers and adjust where that red line falls. And we can see the average rate of return that we need in order to make that red line go away completely, or how much we would need to save in addition. And we can start doing this years prior to retirement, or when you're in retirement, to project that out and really play with a lot of variables there that are really cool to see. They're fun. And it can be scary in certain circumstances, but we also have the ability to say, okay, well, if this does appear a little scary and that red line is sooner than we would like it to be, which we try to eliminate it altogether, but we can then say, well, what do we need to do in order to address this and move it back by a decade or get it out of the picture altogether? But we have to plan for longevity. And the most important part of that is that we've gotten an income that we can count on and rely on that covers our estimated and projected expenses into the future. So that lump sum is fantastic. Most people have the largest amount of money they've ever built up personally in their life the day before and the day after they retire. But over retirement, we've got a habit of spending that money, and that balance can begin to creep down, and that it gets everybody to tighten up and be more constrictive and conservative. And that's not what retirement's about. We want to live and enjoy life, and we want to do it with confidence. And so you've got to have a plan that generates that income for you and continues to keep up with inflation over the course of decades into the potential financial future of retirement.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's always great to talk to you, Peter. Just a side note, in one of my retirement accounts, it does the retirement projections with what you'll need. And then one of the options is, do you want to factor in inflation? And so of course you do, right? But then when I saw that number, it kind of took my breath away with what I was going to need. So
yeah, well, I mean, inflation is real, and it's month after month and year after year. And even with our kind of average rate of inflation around 3.25%, that means that your expenses are going to more than double over the course of the average person's retirement lifespan. It'll take about 20 to 24 years for those expenses to double, which means if you're, if life is costing you $5,000 today, you can maybe budget that into your retirement nest egg. But in 20 years or so, if that doubles to 10,000, or I said per day, per month, if that doubles to $10,000 per month, which is more realistic than per day for most people, sorry about that. But if that inflation rate causes those expenses to double like that, well, where $5,000 was doable, $10,000 a month from most people's nest eggs may really not be all that sustainable. But we've got to factor that in. So you need some money to generate the income, and then you need other money that you have set aside for growth, for future inflation and healthcare and your future financial security and confidence.
Right. Because being invested in the market is the best way to combat inflation.
It is. Over time, that has historically been the best route to combat inflation. I was actually looking at a chart with a couple the other day, and we did the period from 2000 through 2012 as the example. And inflation over that period of time would have eaten up about 36% more of your purchasing power. And it wasn't a very good time in the market, but being in the market over that period of time still would have, if you were investing money over that period, still have amounted to having beat inflation, where being in a savings account over that same period of time would have amounted to losing purchasing power. Yes. So yeah, even in bad times. Now, that being said, in the midst of the moment of periods of higher inflation, generally the market does not react so kindly. So it feels like a little bit of a double whammy sometimes in periods of higher inflation, like the late 70s and then post-COVID is really the two biggest examples we've seen recently of spikes in inflation, and the market reacted poorly. But if you have money set aside that this is my growth money, eventually the market comes back and continues to outpace inflation to keep your purchasing power growing.
Right. So, Peter, I'd like to get into some specifics then. You mentioned, of course, software that you have. I have probably the dummy version on my retirement calculators with my accounts. But how do people prepare for a retirement with no known end date? It is overwhelming. So I know it all comes back to proactive planning. So can you please touch on some specifics then that you work through with your clients before they reach retirement?
Yeah, well, and just to touch on those calculators for a moment, a lot of times what I really don't love within those calculators is it gives you some kind of number for here's what you can rely on for your retirement income, but it does not divulge and disclose the assumptions that is based on. And a lot of times those are very optimistic assumptions for market growth. And a lot of times that number even includes other sources outside of that account's balance in the equation, like Social Security. Well, if you throw Social Security in here, it looks much better, but you remove Social Security and this account alone doesn't equate to the numbers that are being shown. And that throws a lot of people kind of off when they realize that or don't. So anyway, when we are working through these, we look at what has happened in the past, real world scenarios, real world market returns, not just basing things off of a projected positive rate of return, but what happens in the real world when markets decline and go down, and how long do those declines take to recover. We really, although I think most importantly, look at it from a bit of a reverse engineering standpoint, is that it's not about the lump sum that you have and what market returns could do to it, up, down, sideways. It is really about looking first and foremost at expenses and how we can make sure to cover those, and then backtracking how the portfolio can generate enough to cover expenses. And then we might build in layers and ladders and strategies that will add more income into the years to come to cover things like inflation, and have some side pots of money, different accounts that are oriented for different goals. If this is your income-based account, well, over here is your growth account. We're not planning on touching that for 10 or more years. The bucket strategy is something that we've talked about before many times on this program. Just segmenting different dollars to do different goals, to serve different purposes. It can have benefits in the long term, but running through what has happened in the past, what could happen in the future. We're not going to be perfect because the past is not going to repeat exactly, but if we test over some more difficult time periods, then we can feel much more confident moving forward that yes, we have stress tested this. We have examined the assumptions that the plan is based on. We've been, if anything, pessimistic in those assumptions. And if we're wrong, then we end up in a better situation than we thought, not a worse situation. Because a lot of people's assumptions that their entire financial future is based on, in my opinion, are rosy and overly optimistic. And they've never really stress tested those or examined them. So I don't want to be a pessimist in real life, but I do want to be a pessimist in the planning process so I can go out and say, I've planned for the worst. Now let's hope for the best.
Right. Just to ask for a little bit of clarification, when you're talking about stress testing the plan, is there anything different when it comes to stress testing somebody's income plan? Is income plan different from financial plan?
Yeah, it is. Number one, what if the assets run out? What if we exhaust certain accounts, right? And that's most people's biggest fear. Well, what happens? How much can we still rely on and generate if that is to occur? And then number two, less than rosy market scenarios. Like what if we see a Great Recession 2.0 or a Great Depression kind of time period? Is everything based on the market? Hope not, because that would be a pretty bad scenario. Let's make sure that we still have and can maintain financial confidence if that is to happen. What if tax rates change significantly in the future? What if inflation does spike and is higher than it has been? So those are the kind of things, and healthcare, another big one, because I mentioned at the beginning that people are living longer lives, but not necessarily healthier lives. Like what happens when we have to include the cost of covering those kind of healthcare events? And a lot of people have not included or thought about or addressed the potential cost of healthcare. And that has inflation higher than almost anything else right now, and has for many decades. So those are the things when I say stress testing, where we really kind of break the plan where and wherever we can. And see what the ultimate consequences of those stress tests have on the lasting financial confidence.
You know, I'm really enjoying that Countdown to Retirement series. So, Peter, we covered a lot today. Walk us through again, please, how somebody can find their own downloadable copy so that they can ingest this information at their own pace.
Yeah. Well, right on my website, which is richonplanning.com, which is, by the way, where you can go and click a button to schedule a phone call or a visit. But right at the top, there's also a tab for resources. And if you go to the resources and then go to the downloads, which is kind of the sub menu there, over on the left-hand side of the website, there is the Countdown to Retirement Guidebook. And it is 10 different reports, 10 different pieces of the countdown, and they are all included there, along with some of the things that you may need to consider as you are looking through this. But really, I think if you move through all 10 of these and consider all of those different reports and resources, you will have a lot to think about or feel very confident about the planning that you've done.
Great.
So yeah, RichonPlanning.com, resources, download that countdown to retirement, or click that button to schedule a call or a visit with me. And I'm happy to talk that over.
All right. And how else can we reach you?
You can give me a call directly, 919-300-5886, 919-300-5886, or you can just email Peter@RichonPlanning.com. Love to hear from folks.
Great.
And look forward to helping anyone I can.
Okay. Peter, thank you.
Thank you. Hey folks, Peter Richon here with Richon Planning. So glad that you are enjoying the podcast, Planning Matters Radio. You know, one of the tools that we've put out there that people really seem to appreciate and really are finding of value is at 919retired.com. It is your retirement tax bill calculator. If you've got any kind of retirement account, your tax deferred, 401k or IRA, this is the website, this is the resource where you can go, you can plug in your own numbers, your information, you can slide the tool calculator up and down for your tax rate or your amount of savings and see what your tax bill is likely to be if you default and defer to the IRS's plan versus what you could potentially bring that tax bill down to. A lot of times it is a very significant savings. So if you have not yet, go to the website 919retired.com, run your numbers on the retirement tax bill calculator.
This has been Planning Matters Radio.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookzone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.